It's been a while. Still childless? Such a defective product for not being able to show off any grandchildren. Betty and I have had our ups and downs in the past, but even now, thinking back on it, it still makes my blood boil. After all, the harassment I've faced from her about not being able to have children has been excessive. I don't know how desperately she wants grandchildren, but I really wish she would stop blaming me entirely for not being able to have children. To call someone a defective product is such a cruel way to put it. In a way, it's almost impressive. I'm currently at the park. And I'm not alone. My child is right over there. You should have seen the look on Betty's face when I said that. The grandchild she had been longing for, almost desperately, was right there. But reality is cruel. She hasn't realized that what she has done is coming back to haunt her, which is quite naive of her. It's about time she realized. I won't let her pretend to forget now. My name is Amy, and I'm a 45-year-old homemaker this year. I love children, and I got my teaching license in college and worked as a teacher at a public elementary school. Being a teacher had its tough moments, but there was also joy in being involved in the children's growth, which made me feel like it was my true calling. I was immersed in my work, but one day a childhood friend introduced me to someone. That was how I met John, who would become my husband. John was 25 at the time. He had graduated from university and was working as a social studies teacher at a middle school. He seemed to be struggling with the lack of romantic opportunities while working at a middle school. He hadn't really dated much, focusing on his studies during his university days. He mentioned that wanting to try dating women was what prompted him to talk to his friend. Although the ages of the children we teach at elementary and middle schools differ, being teachers, it was thought we'd be a good match and have a lot in common. When my friend introduced me to John, I wasn't seeing anyone and was dedicated to my job. So, I wasn't very enthusiastic about the introduction, but since my friend had gone to the trouble, I thought I should at least meet him once. I remember it clearly. We had arranged to meet at a cafe, but he was nowhere to be seen when the time came. I thought I'd wait another 30 minutes before leaving, but then I saw someone running into the cafe. Sorry to keep you waiting. John came in out of breath, looking like he could barely stand. No, it's okay. I was just getting a bit worried. Actually, a student in my class asked me for book recommendations. We got so caught up talking about it that I lost track of time. Hearing his response made me burst out laughing. At the same time, it was clear to me that he was not a bad person. If he could get so involved in a discussion about books with a student, it showed he was well liked. And the thought of John getting so caught up in recommending books to a student that he forgot his appointment was somehow endearing. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh so much when we've just met. But now, I really want to know more about you. Really? Seeing you smile made my nervousness just disappear. You were nervous? Yes, well, I didn't expect to meet such a wonderful woman, John said, somewhat bashfully. Oh, stop it. I'm almost 35, you know? I'm probably quite a bit older than you. I'm 25 now, but age doesn't matter to me. From there, John and I began to have deeper conversations, trying to understand each other. His passion for work, his compassionate nature, and most of all, the respect he commanded from his students became evident. It seemed that John also thought highly of me. It's only been a short while since we met, but I'd regret it if I didn't say this now. Would you consider a relationship with me? With marriage in mind? John, his face flushed, stared at me intently. I was set on my decision. With you, I think we could have a good relationship. I also have the same feeling as you. The time I spent with John was truly enjoyable. Even outside of our dates, I found myself wishing to be with John more, and it was then that he proposed to me. Since the first time I met you, Amy, I've always wished we could be together forever. Will you marry me? Yes. I feel like I can be happy with you, John. I answered without hesitation. After meeting each other's parents and completing all the formalities, it was decided that John and I would get married. To think I, who was so focused on my career just a while ago, would be getting married and starting a life with someone I love. In preparation for our marriage, we discussed our future careers and the possibility of having children. One of the reasons I fell for John was his respect for my thoughts and life choices. I want to continue working even after we get married. Above all, I love my job as a teacher. I can tell that much, Amy. But what about children? Personally, I'd like to have them if possible, but when it comes to actually having them, I want to respect your wishes. Of course, I want children too. It might be tough balancing work and family, but I hope we can have a child sooner rather than later. John and I agreed to try for a baby while managing our careers as best as we could. This is something beyond our control, a blessing we hope to receive. However, we were oblivious to the brewing storm that was about to disrupt our peaceful life. I'm off to the extracurricular activities for a bit. Okay, you'll be back by dinner, right? Take care. After seeing John off, I was having coffee alone in the living room when the doorbell rang. Oh, Amy. Hello? Ah, Betty, hello. John's at school for extracurricular activities. Is there something you need? At that moment, John's mother, my mother-in-law, Betty, seemed a bit disappointed, but she quickly turned to face me and suddenly said, "It's almost been a year since you got married, hasn't it?" "Yes, it has." "Thanks to you." "That's not what I mean. Before taking care of other people's children, you should have your own. If you can't even manage that, you might as well quit your job." Betty looked frustrated, as if her message wasn't getting through. That's quite sudden to say. Isn't it about time? Or were you planning to wait until the stable period? Children, you mean? You're 35, aren't you? Having 2 or 3 children is normal. The sudden talk about children took me by surprise. This isn't something I can control at will, and I decided to be honest about it. John and I have talked about it, and we'd be happy to have one. We'll let you know right away if I get pregnant. What are you being so nonchalant about? I don't understand how you can afford to be so leisurely about someday. I was taken aback by her nervous demeanor. After all, she seemed so calm and gentle when we met before our marriage. I'm sorry if I've offended you. But this isn't something I can manage on my own. So what are you saying? It's John's fault? Saying this, Betty briskly walked into the room. Then, from inside the room, I could hear Betty's voice. "What's this machine?" I bumped my foot into it. "I'm sorry, that's an air purifier." "An air purifier? This big?" "I have a house dust allergy, so I'm particularly careful about the air quality. I'm sensitive to house dust, and I start sneezing uncontrollably. I keep it to clean the air. I'm sorry if it's in the way." Then, Betty let out a heavy sigh. "Ha! Are you saying you're coddling yourself with that?" "Excuse me? Coddling, you say?" "Well, yes. All this talk about dust and dirt is why you're physically weak, right? And if you need to ventilate, just open a window. Unfortunately, this apartment is on the 2nd floor in an area with heavy traffic. I'm also concerned about the exhaust gases." "No, but there are exhaust gases, so I can't really keep the windows open that much. Relying on such a nonsensical machine. It's because of things like this that you can't have children, isn't it?" Betty, ready for a fight, looked at me as if she was convinced she was right. "Because you want children, don't you? Then come to my house next week." "But it's fine. My husband has already passed away, and I'm the only one there, so it won't bother anyone." It seemed like I had no choice but to go. The mere thought of it was depressing. The following week, I visited Betty's house. "Come this way." Betty pulled my hand and led me into the living room. As soon as I entered the living room, a strange scent hit my nose. Excuse me, but..." I hesitated, unsure how to describe the peculiar smell, and then she handed me a cup that seemed to contain something like tea. "Here. This tea is supposed to help regulate your body and make it easier to conceive. Am I supposed to drink this?" "What about yours?" "I'm not drinking it. They say good medicine is bitter, so I'm making myself be the bad guy by making you drink it." The strange color and scent made it seem impossible to drink. While I was struggling, she opened the zipper of my bag and shoved in something that looked like a paper bag. What's this? Don't go through my bag like that. Please stop. Don't make it sound like I'm a thief. This tea works best if you drink 4 cups a day. And next, there's this. Betty then dragged me to the yard. Seeing a mountain of laundry, I was puzzled. What's with all the laundry? The gauze towels, small clothes, and bibs didn't seem like they belonged to Betty. I got them from an acquaintance. They say that handling and washing children's items can make it easier to conceive. It's also good practice for when you have children. Then, she brought out a large tub and a washboard. They say if you wash with all your heart, the child will be happy to come into your womb. I was left speechless as she confidently walked back to the living room. Indeed, I do think about having children, and John and I have talked about it. But why is Betty in such a rush, despite our decision to take our time and not force anything? I was furious, but I couldn't just leave without doing anything. As instructed, I washed the pile of children's clothes with a washboard and hung them up to dry. Betty, I'm done. Then come back the day after tomorrow. Just like today, come over and wash. But I have work the day after tomorrow. Work? You can make time before or after work, can't you? If you really want children, you should be willing to make some sacrifices. Being stubborn, I followed Betty's instructions out of spite. After school, I would go to Betty's house late at night and diligently hand-wash the clothes of children I didn't know, in the dark. My hands became rough from washing so many clothes in the cold. Despite using hand cream, my hands quickly became chapped from the dryness. What happened to your hands, Amy? John looked at me with concern. I hesitated to tell him the truth. To me, it felt like an outdated superstition, but for John, it was something his mother was doing. I was worried about speaking ill of his mother, especially since he also wanted children. Actually, your mother has been asking about when we'll have children. She told me that hand-washing children's clothes can help with conception. So I've been going to her house every other day to wash them. John looked at me incredulously. What's that? Does she seriously believe doing such things will lead to having children? John seemed to ponder for a moment before decisively speaking up. I'll talk to my mom about this, so you don't have to go there anymore. Actually, she has a decent inheritance from my father and had said before that she wanted to try living on her own. Not to rely on me or her future grandchildren. Also, I think I should visit a doctor. A doctor? Why? Because having children isn't just a woman's issue, right? Maybe the issue is with me, and it's better to know, don't you think? I admired this about John. He would consider my troubles as his own and think through them together. Thank you. But don't overdo it. It's for you, Amy. It would be harder to stay silent while all this is going on. However, Betty wasn't going to settle down just like that. I talked to Mom. You don't have to go to her house anymore. Thank you, John. I'm sorry for putting you through this. No, don't worry about it. Actually, it seems like the difficulty in conceiving might be due to me. John spoke with an apologetic tone. But the doctor said it should be okay, with medication and regular checkups. Let's see how it goes for a bit, and if nothing changes, we'll think about what to do next. It seemed like the issue was resolved for the time being, but it wasn't over yet. Sometime later, a package arrived at our house. The cash-on-delivery package was from Betty. Upon opening it, there were several books and a lengthy letter. The letter expressed anger about the conversation I had with John regarding Betty. The books were on pregnancy and parenting, and they seemed quite old. Honestly, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief towards Betty's actions. John seemed to feel the same. I told her to stop, and she's still doing this. What should we do with these books? Honestly, even if she says to read them, Mom must be blinded by her desire for grandchildren, not seeing anything else. I'm truly sorry for making you go through this. After some thought, John chose his words carefully. Being caught between me and Betty must have been difficult for him. My mom is important, but I want to protect my wife, Amy, the most. If it means hurting you, then we need to reconsider our relationship with her. But, she's still your mother. I don't want you to regret anything if something happens. It's unavoidable for ceremonies, but we don't have to interact beyond that. I'm really sorry for not noticing earlier. John apologized deeply. We decided to minimize contact with Betty, except for necessary ceremonies, and to block her calls and refuse her packages. John seemed to be sending her some money personally, but that was between them, so I chose not to say anything this time. For a while, we lived peacefully without seeing Betty. John said, stress is the worst for your health, and keeping distance from her might have been for the best. It was about a decade after Betty's problematic behavior. I was leisurely sitting on a park bench, sipping coffee. While I was enjoying my coffee for the first time in a while, a voice came from behind. Long time no see. Still childless? Such a defective product for not being able to show off any grandchildren. For a moment, I couldn't recognize who it was. But even though she had become much thinner and smaller, it was Betty. To demean someone as a defective just like that, some people really don't change over the years. Her scornful gaze made the warm coffee I was savoring suddenly taste cold and bitter. It was a stark reminder of how emotions can drastically alter our sense of taste. Betty. What's the meaning of not showing your face? You didn't tell John anything unnecessary, did you? It's not like I meant to. Betty said, poking the ground near my feet with her cane. What's your intention, going so far as to avoid your husband's mother like this? While nagging incessantly, she scrutinized me from head to toe. Sitting here all elegant in the park, sipping coffee by yourself, you must feel pretty good, huh? Since the day Betty commanded me to wash a stranger's baby clothes, nothing about her has changed. And yet, I had spent the last 10 years peacefully without encountering Betty. I wish we could avoid meeting, but I gathered my courage and spoke up. My children are right over there. Betty appeared momentarily puzzled, but then burst into raucous laughter. She was laughing so hard, showing her teeth, as if she was about to roll on the floor laughing. Is the idea of me having a child that ridiculous to her? Betty must have always assumed that it was impossible for me to have children. That's probably why she feels comfortable behaving this way. It's her prerogative to believe that happiness comes only with children, but I wish she wouldn't impose her values on me. Then, suddenly turning serious, she glared at me. I braced myself for what she might say next. What a sudden claim. Aren't you significantly older than John? There's no way you could have children. Indeed, I am older than John, but it's unfair to be so categorically told that I can't have children. After all, there are many couples with age differences who have children without issue, even later in life. I took a deep breath, ready to express my feelings. So? Then, Betty placed her index finger on my lips. With her finger raised pointedly, she glared at me as if to say, don't say another word. So you should have just done as I said. I don't know what you told John, but you made him run away by saying unnecessary things. A cursed person like you couldn't possibly have children. I felt the weight of Betty's pressure intensely. After 10 years of estrangement, it was honestly frightening. The thought of being overwhelmed by this pace filled me with anxiety. As Betty berated me, children approached from a distance, looking at us with worried expressions. I felt terrible for making them see me like this. Mom? What's happening? Is this lady someone you know? This person is. I hesitated about telling Emily and Emma the whole truth. Despite my bitter memories, Betty is their grandmother. Should I keep them apart based solely on my personal feelings and reluctance? I was unsure how to introduce her. Emily and Emma had never met Betty, nor had I ever mentioned her, so they wouldn't suspect she was their grandmother. Then, Emily and Emma started whispering to each other. They seemed to be trying to whisper, but I could hear them. Emma. Do you think this lady might be? Right? Emily, do you think so too? Because she was here the other day too, it's definitely her. Betty, pretending not to notice their whispering, tried to approach Emily and Emma. She reached out with trembling hands, but the two looked at her with indescribable expressions. Indeed, to Emily and Emma, she was an unknown old woman. Suddenly being approached with a trembling hand must have been quite frightening. Could it really be John's children? My grandchildren? Betty moved even closer to Emily and Emma as if it was a touching reunion. Then, Emily and Emma took a couple of steps back and said to Betty, "You're the nagging old lady from the convenience store, right?" "Eh? What do you mean? Are you sure?" I thought the same. I was confused as they suddenly became excited. "She's always at the convenience store near our swimming school." "Right. We always see her yelling at the clerks." What's going on?" "The lady from the convenience store near our swimming school. She's famous for always yelling at the clerks to get her money back." "Exactly. She only yells at the younger people, but she doesn't say anything when the manager with the name tag is there." This was new to me, but it was clear she chose her targets for her tirades. It was as if she only attacked the weak. "I'm just teaching them that they should listen to their elders. I'm doing the right thing." "Such?" Emily and Emma looked at me. Perhaps thinking I was being unjustly accused by the nagging old lady from the convenience store, they suddenly sprang into action. "Mom hasn't done anything wrong. Please stop." Betty, pretending not to hear, moved closer to them. For Betty, meeting Emily and Emma must have been a moment filled with emotion. This is evident from the tears welling up in her eyes. "Really, my grandchildren? Well, since we've met, let me have a good look at your faces. Don't come any closer. If anything happens to Mom, I'll sound this," Emma said, brandishing a personal alarm. Seeing the brightly colored, large personal alarm, Betty seemed to shrink back. Anyone would be taken aback if threatened with the sounding of an alarm. It's not often that a grandmother is treated like a suspicious person and faced with a personal alarm by her own grandchildren. I instinctively tried to ensure the safety of the two. Then, Betty began to tremble violently. Such. The shock must have been great for her, being treated as a suspicious person by her long-awaited grandchildren. Betty, trembling, seemed much smaller. However, what concerned me more was something else. I decided to press further and started a conversation with Betty. "According to Emma and others, you keep demanding refunds at convenience stores, right? Why is that?" "Well, because I'm being given stuff that's just not usable, and it's a hassle." Betty suddenly became defiant. She spoke as if she hadn't done anything wrong at all. I decided to ask Betty the very question she would least want to hear. "Are you having money troubles, Betty? Is that why you can do such embarrassing things in public?" "What? Embarrassing? How dare you speak to your elder like that? She thinks she should be respected, which is why she can say such things." But she didn't seem to like that I hit the nail on the head and appeared somewhat flustered. But usually, people would be too embarrassed to be so bold with just the young clerks. "You're quite something to not feel that, Betty. Enough. Be quiet." Betty gritted her teeth in frustration. Then, Emily made a curious remark. "This person always comes in with an empty container, demanding a refund and yelling loudly. That figures. Waving an empty container and shouting about it must be quite the scene." "What? What are you planning to do with an empty container?" "I don't really know. But she was saying something about doing this to a penniless old person." I realized these were the children's words. "Are you in financial trouble by any chance?" "Yes. It's awful, getting old and running out of money." As far as I remember, Betty's house was overflowing with branded items. She probably squandered the entire inheritance from my father-in-law. It must be hard living in financial difficulty. If you understand, could you send me a little money? $1,500, or even $1,000 would do. I dodged Betty's approaching gaze and said, "I must decline." "What? After all that has happened, expecting help now is a bit much, don't you think?" Then, Betty glared at me with frustration. "You must be heartless. To not extend a helping hand to a frail old person like me. She still seems to think it's her right to be helped. But there's no need for that. You've brought this all on yourself. How pitiful for these children to be raised by someone like you." Then, Emily and Emma stood in front of me and addressed Betty. "We're not pitiful at all. We love our mom, so stop saying such horrible things." If you keep saying such terrible things, we'll really go to the police. Betty was lost for words at the sudden retort from Emily and Emma. She must have been shocked, especially by the grandchildren she desperately wanted, threatening to go to the police. I wouldn't be able to stand it if I were in her shoes. If that's the case, shall I give you what you really need, Betty? Really? Just wait a moment, please. I ran to a nearby store and came back with something. What is this? Do I look old enough to need something like this? I placed adult diapers in front of Betty. The package, boldly labeled Comfort Care Diapers, was enough to intimidate Betty. Betty's face turned beet red with anger. Her face was so red, she looked just like a boiled octopus. Do you remember making me wash baby clothes until my hands were chapped? Saying it was a practice and a prayer for when you have kids, even though I couldn't have children? Betty looked somewhat uncomfortable. After mumbling for a bit, she whispered softly. I did it thinking of your well-being, and I really wanted a grandchild. All my friends had grandchildren. And I was the only one left out. So, it's the same with me then. For your sake. And wanting a grandchild just because others have them, is that a child's mentality? Betty glared at me, clearly frustrated. Treat someone like an old person or a child, and you'll see what happens. It's quite convenient for you, isn't it? Okay, for you but not for others. Then, I heard John's voice from behind. He had come upon us by chance. You're not still harassing Amy, are you? Harassment? That sounds terrible. It was just a little. I explained the earlier conversation to John. It seems your mother is out of money. She's been causing trouble at the local convenience store. When I visited her house before, it was filled with branded bags and wallets. John's usually calm expression turned stern. Mom. Weren't you the one who said you'd live off Dad's inheritance without bothering anyone? And didn't you promise not to approach Amy anymore? No. Seeing Amy was just a coincidence. How could it be a coincidence? In such a large park, and a children's park at that, running into Amy just by chance, who would believe that? Betty fell silent. John had hit the nail on the head. You've always loved buying branded items, are you still doing that? Well, I just bought bags and shoes to match the occasion, and it kind of added up. I was even sending you some money from my allowance, and to think you were buying so many bags and wallets. I told you to only buy what you need. Didn't I? I feel betrayed. Then, Betty clung to John. This is all a misunderstanding. It's not true. What's the misunderstanding? The lie? It's clear now that you're a liar. Don't contact me anymore. And obviously, no more allowances. John turned on his heel and didn't look back at Betty again. Betty collapsed on the spot. Being rejected by her own son, she might never recover. If only you had had child sooner. If only you had them while I was still around to see. Well, it's not like I had children for you, Betty. I left those words behind and headed home with Emily and Emma. I never wanted to see her again. I thought I wouldn't. I had warned Emily and Emma to be careful of Betty when going to and from school or swimming school, but they never encountered her. One day, when I had almost forgotten about her, the hospital called. A few days after our encounter, Betty had tripped over a step at a nearby supermarket and fallen. When I went to the hospital at their request, Betty was there looking diminished in her bed, along with the supermarket manager and a police officer. Betty had unfortunately broken her leg. Upon inquiring, it seemed she had been secretly taking items from the ready-made food section and had been watched by the store staff. No, this is that. I don't want to hear excuses. It's embarrassing, so please don't contact us again. What can I do? John used to send me money, but that stopped. I was at a loss for words. And nobody would give me your contact info, I was just so lonely. I suppose so. Apparently, she had tried every possible way to get in touch with me again. She must have been asking around, hoping someone would disclose our whereabouts. Betty always believed that if she asked, people would comply. However, I had taken precautions beforehand. I had informed various parties about Betty's behavior and the unpleasant experiences in the past, while also asking them not to give out my contact information. I didn't even want to imagine encountering someone as self-centered as Betty again. It turned out that no one had given Betty our contact information. I heard that some had even blocked her calls, which suggests she was quite disliked among her acquaintances. Anyone would surely keep their distance from such a person. Given her character, it wasn't surprising to hear she was blocked by some. In the end, Betty spent her days in the hospital alone, feeling lonely. Apparently, she lashed out at the hospital staff due to her stress and was severely reprimanded. As long as it stops there, it's fine, but who knows what the future holds. Continuing to rampage without realizing how much she is disliked is typical of Betty. I am living happy days with Emily, Emma, and my husband. I was worried about what would happen when we unexpectedly met Betty in the park, but I'm glad I took decisive action. It was a good decision to discuss the issues with Betty with my husband properly. We sought treatment together as a couple, and as a result, we were able to meet our 2 daughters. I've also clearly understood that not cherishing people like Betty can eventually come back to haunt you. Mom. Come here, quick. Mom, you're so slow. Emily and Emma are beckoning me with bursting smiles. I rushed over to catch up with them and gave them a big hug. I want to cherish and live these happy days with Emily, Emma, and my husband, savoring our happiness. One of my earliest childhood memories is my mother's tearful face. She was being bullied by her mother-in-law, my grandmother. Back then, I didn't know the term bullying, and I used to wonder, why does grandma only treat my mom meanly? I disliked my grandmother for hurting my mom. When my grandmother passed away, I remember feeling relieved as a child. Little did I know that I would go through the same experience. But I'm not just a woman who cries. My name is Jessica, a 37-year-old office worker at a mid-sized company. After dating Michael, a colleague 2 years my junior, for 2 years and getting engaged, we discovered I was pregnant. Having almost given up on having children, we were thrilled, and so was Michael. We decided to register our marriage first, postponing the wedding ceremony and reception. However, before the pregnancy was revealed, my husband's mother, my mother-in-law, who had been happy about our relationship, suddenly changed her attitude. A shotgun wedding, how indecent. Jessica must have seduced Michael, she said, looking down on me. To my mother-in-law, who lost her husband 10 years ago, Michael was the only man in the family. She adored and relied on him heavily. Believing that an older woman snatched her son away, she thought a fait accompli was created to secure her position as his wife. Michael has a good salary and is the heir to our family. You were just after a wealthy marriage, weren't you? Frankly, our in-laws are neither of notable lineage nor wealthy, to use terms like heir and marrying into wealth. Moreover, Michael has an older sister, Sarah, who lived with her husband and in-laws after marriage, so she would likely be the heir. Michael has made it clear to his mother that he has no intention of living in their inconvenient, rural hometown with poor transportation. Yet, in my mother-in-law's mind, the eldest son equals the heir to the family home. Since it's done, you must give birth to a boy, she pressured me. When prenatal tests showed it was a boy, my mother-in-law was overjoyed, but I had a bad feeling. Then, at 4 months, we discovered we were having fraternal twins. Learning that one of them was a girl filled me with anxiety about potential favoritism. Perhaps due to the stress, I was at risk of a threatened miscarriage and was admitted to the hospital at 7 months pregnant. Then, my mother-in-law intervened again. People nowadays are so frail. I had my hardships during pregnancy, but I never had to be hospitalized, she complained to my husband, who visited daily, calling me a failed wife and incompetent. She even suspected that the children weren't Michael's. It's odd for a 37-year-old to get pregnant and to be at risk of miscarriage so easily. They can't be Michael's children. She bullied with baseless logic. Even when explained by the obstetrician that twin pregnancies and deliveries are high risk, she wouldn't listen. Eventually, I gave birth to the twins, Alex and Emily, via cesarean section. My mother-in-law criticized this too. After the birth, as I suffered from the anesthesia wearing off, she said, C-sections are just taking the easy way out. A mother who hasn't experienced the pain of childbirth lacks affection for her child. That's ridiculous. The pain when the anesthesia wore off from the C-section was unbearable. At that time, a nurse silenced her by saying, about 70% of mothers with twins have C-sections, and it has nothing to do with love. However, she continued to complain to Michael. Fortunately, Michael stood up for me, telling his mother, "Don't pretend to know everything and insult Jessica when you've never given birth to twins yourself." Hearing this made me tear up with joy. But even after being discharged, my mother-in-law's bullying didn't stop. Although our house is just an hour's drive from my in-laws, she insists on taking a taxi and then says, since I made the effort to come, you should cover the taxi fare. When I'm overwhelmed with taking care of the twins, she complains, you can't even serve tea to your husband's mother. What an incompetent wife you are. And when both start crying at the same time, she snaps, how noisy. It's definitely your children, criticizing everything. She has no understanding of how challenging it is to take care of twins. I was exhausted, barely getting any sleep. But Michael helped by saying, then, Mom, why don't you try looking after the twins for just one day? You'll see how hard it is for Jessica. I had resigned from my job due to the pregnancy and wasn't aware of the details, but our company was undergoing a merger, creating a tough situation for Michael. His department was eliminated, and he was assigned to a new one with no prior experience. His salary decreased, and with the acquiring company disapproving of overtime, it dropped to about 2/3 of what it used to be. Furthermore, he had to bring work home due to the inability to do overtime, often working late into the night in his room. Despite this, because he was home, he actively helped by bathing the twins, changing diapers, and folding laundry. This is why he understood how difficult it was to care for two children simultaneously. I really appreciate that Michael keeps an eye on his mother when she's at our house to prevent her from bullying me. 3 years later, I decided to return to work. Raising twins turned out to be more expensive than anticipated, with costs for diapers, clothes, and food, leading us to dip into our savings and struggle to get by on Michael's salary alone. The daycare situation required the twins to split up. I would drop off one child, and Michael the other, with me picking them up. I explained the situation to my company and was allowed to leave an hour early from work to manage this. My mother-in-law actually offered to help with Alex's drop-off and pickup, but we declined. From the start, she showed favoritism towards Alex, the boy, by buying him clothes and toys, so we wanted to keep her at a distance. However, while we could guard against her on weekdays, we couldn't prevent her from showing up at our house on weekends, using a taxi as usual. She would arrive, laden with bags, and start pulling out toys, clothes, and sweets for Alex. We appreciate you buying things for Alex, but please don't neglect Emily. But Emily looks just like you, not cute at all, she would retort. Despite our requests, she wouldn't listen. The children began to notice her differential treatment. Alex became clingy to grandma, while Emily would hide whenever she saw her. Once, when Michael and I were not looking, she even took Alex back to her house without permission. Moreover, she had told my sister-in-law Sarah that I had dumped Alex's care on her. After receiving an angry call from Sarah, Michael clarified the situation, resolving the misunderstanding. However, this led to a new conflict, with Sarah feeling that her mother favored Michael's family, who had a son, over hers, which only had daughters, straining their relationship. A change in this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law battle came one weekend when the kids were 5. I used to visit my parents on weekends, and upon returning home around 8 p.m., I was met by my mother-in-law standing at the entrance, scolding me for abandoning the children to have fun on a weekend. I'm sorry, I had errands at my parents'. Michael said he'd look after the kids. I replied while rushing to the kitchen to warm up lasagna for dinner. Seeing this, she exclaimed, "What time do you think it is to be serving something as heavy as lasagna, and frozen at that? That's just lazy." Indeed, it was frozen, but this was something I made from scratch and froze last Sunday. It's packed with vegetables and just a little meat, making it gentle on the stomach and safe to eat even at night. When I explained this, my mother-in-law hesitated but then retorted, "Anyway, as a wife, failing to serve fresh meals to your husband is unacceptable. It's all because you're working that you have to cook in bulk and resort to freezing. Our financial situation remains tight even now. As the children grow, the expenses for food, clothing, and education will only increase, never being enough. When I explained this, she countered, "Michael is earning well, isn't he? His company was merged, and now he works for a large corporation. His salary must be good." In reality, his salary had decreased. Michael explained this to her. Previously, Michael held a managerial position in a department of a mid-sized company, but after the merger, his department was dissolved. Michael was demoted from a managerial position to a regular employee in a different department. Moreover, the overtime pay, a privilege for regular employees, was almost non-existent due to the company's culture of discouraging overtime. As a result, a significant drop in salary was inevitable. With just Michael's salary, we couldn't save anything for our children, so quitting my job wasn't an option. Yet, my mother-in-law wouldn't accept this. "Jessica, you re-employed at another company, didn't you? It's only been a few years, so it's barely more than part-time work. Quit that job." No, her annual income is actually double mine. When Michael revealed that, her eyes widened in surprise. "What? That's impossible." She wouldn't believe it until I explained. "While my weekday job pays less than Michael's, I've been earning money by uploading videos to a certain site from my parents' computer on weekends. The content of the videos is precisely about raising twins. It's a channel where I share the challenges and solutions I've encountered in raising 2 children, as well as recommendations for toys, food, and clothes. Initially, I was only sharing information on social media. However, I received a lot of feedback saying, 'There's so little information on raising twins, this is incredibly helpful, and if you have any recommended products, please introduce them.' Seeing this, Michael suggested that I try posting on a revenue-generating video site. The channel became quite popular, especially among mothers expecting twins, as I responded to questions with detailed videos. Eventually, baby product manufacturers approached me to try their products and provide feedback or feature their recommended items in my videos. Though it's just a few hours of work on weekends, it now generates an income of $3,000 to $4,000 a month." "Are you kidding? I've never seen you do that," she said, disbelieving. But since my workspace is at my parents' house, it's natural that she hasn't seen it. I work from my parents' house because it's hard to concentrate at our own home with the kids around, potentially causing interruptions. Sometimes I bring the kids along, and during those times, my parents play with them. Seeing my parents happily surrounded by their grandchildren makes me feel like I'm doing a bit of filial piety, which is quite satisfying. After learning that I truly earn double what Michael does, my mother-in-law suddenly started to cozy up to me. Well, Jessica, you were hiding your talent. That's right, you're the woman Michael chose." Her sudden change in attitude is because things aren't going well with Sarah's family. In front of Sarah, her mother constantly praised Alex and bought various things for him, which infuriated Sarah to the point where she demanded that her mother leave their family home. Since the land and house were already transferred to Sarah and her husband, her mother's position became incredibly weak. She might have thought about moving in with us, but she didn't like the idea of a saucy daughter-in-law and resorted to bullying to assert her dominance. Now realizing her low standing in our home as well, she suddenly became more humble, fearing that being disliked by Michael and me would leave her with nowhere to go. But changing her attitude now is too late. Recently, Emily has started to stand up to her grandmother. Just the other day, when the grandmother said, "I don't need a granddaughter. They just cost money. It would have been better if such a worthless grandchild didn't exist," Emily retorted. "Then, Grandma and your mother are also worthless, because they're women." Seeing the grandmother's sour face, Michael and I couldn't help but burst into laughter, proud of our daughter. Given this situation, living with the grandmother is absolutely out of the question. "I'm sorry, but I have no intention of living with someone who disrespects and belittles me and Emily," I told her. Michael later found out from Sarah that she was also cold to Sarah's 2 daughters and pressured her daily to have a son. Naturally, Sarah's daughters also disliked the grandmother and refused to live with her any longer. In the end, the grandmother had to return to her childhood home, where her sister's family lives. However, given her personality, it seems she's not welcomed there either. She kept calling Sarah, crying and begging to live with her again, until Sarah finally blocked her number. Serves her right. As for us, we decided to move to my parents' house before the kids start elementary school. We informed her of our move only through an email stating, "We have moved," and have since cut off all contact with her. Now, including my parents, our family of 6 enjoys a lively and fulfilling daily life. We plan to continue the video uploads for a while longer, save up money, and renovate the house, as Michael and I have discussed. What, you haven't remarried yet? My ex-husband insulted me by calling me an uneducated fool and eloped with a younger woman. Upon seeing me after 10 years and noticing that I had kept my maiden name, he said condescendingly, "If you want, I can take you back." What kind of way to speak is that? Idiotic. It seems like I need to teach him the reality. Do you know what the most common surname in the US is? The answer is Smith. Apparently, there are about 1.9 million people with the surname Smith in the US. My surname used to be Smith before I got married. My name is Sophia. Right after graduating from high school, I moved to New York and ended up working for a company there. My ex-husband, Dylan, was a colleague at that company. He was 10 years older than me, and to me, who had just graduated from high school, he seemed very mature and reliable. He took great care of me when I was still in my teens. I was very fond of him, and it didn't take long for us to start dating as we became conscious of each other. He patiently accepted my whims and always escorted me smartly on our dates. Being a salesperson, he was refreshing to look at and handsome, and I fell for him more and more. After a year of dating, he proposed to me. I was just turned 20 at the time. There was a significant age gap, so people around me said, "You should think it over." But I loved him for his maturity and couldn't imagine marrying anyone else, so I decided to go through with it. Love is blind, or so they say. Looking back, I regret not living together before getting married to see his true colors. But at that time, I was truly happy, delighted to come home to the same house as Dylan, and above all, thrilled to share his last name. Until then, whether at work or school, whenever someone called him Ms. Smith, multiple people would respond. Yes, and I had to write my full name when everyone else could just write their last names. His last name wasn't that rare, but I was glad to be free from such nuisances. Let's get back to talking about my married life with Dylan. Initially, it was truly blissful. I continued to work even after getting married, but since it's not ideal for a couple to be in the same department, I was transferred from sales to an administrative position. I didn't have a strong attachment to sales, so this was no problem at all. In fact, since I wasn't good at sales, I even felt lucky. We shared household chores and helped each other out. "You'll handle the cooking, I'll do my best with everything else," Dylan would say, actively doing his part. We hardly interacted at work. But when we leave the office at the same time, we'd leave the office together and shop for dinner on our way home. It was a very happy time. However, after 3 years of marriage, things gradually started to go awry. First, our clock-out time no longer matched up. Where we used to go home together at least once a week, I started getting messages like, "I have to work late," or "I have a drinking party with clients." Being in a different floor from Dylan, who was in sales, I couldn't grasp the situation. Unlike administrative roles where I can leave at regular hours, I fully understood that sales involved a lot of networking and could be very busy. Despite feeling lonely, I tried to accept it as part of the job. Then, Dylan stopped doing household chores altogether. One night, before a day off, he texted, "I'll be working late, so go ahead and sleep," so I prepared dinner and went to bed early. When I woke up in the morning, the used dishes were still on the table. There was trash from alcohol and snacks scattered around, and his suit was discarded all the way from the entrance to the living room. And there he was, snoring on the sofa, belly out. He probably hadn't taken a shower or brushed his teeth before passing out after drinking. Seeing Dylan's sloppy appearance for the first time left me stunned for a moment, but realizing this couldn't go on, I said, "Wake up, or you'll catch a cold." He sluggishly got up, clicked his tongue, and muttered, "Clean up before you say anything, it's disgusting. This is just like a low-educated woman." And quickly went to take a shower. I was shocked by his harsh words, but acknowledging the room was in a terrible state, I cleaned up before he came out of the bath. After his shower, he just lounged on the sofa watching TV, showing no intention of doing any household chores on his day off. Thinking, he's tired from working overtime, it's hard to ask him to do more. I couldn't bring myself to say anything. My distrust towards Dylan grew stronger. Initially, it was just his neglect of household duties, but then he started to demean my character and work. One day, as I was doing chores with Dylan lounging around, he sighed and said, "You've got it easy with your job, no overtime." And then, well, sales might be too hard for a high school grad. Maybe you could have landed contracts by sleeping around for business when you were fresh and young, but you're rounding up to 30 now, right? It's impossible now. Though, I married you for your youth, and you aged so quickly. It's like a scam, really a scam. A scam for aging? That makes no sense. Sure, rounding up I'm 30, but you're even 40. Everyone ages, it's only natural. When I said that, Dylan suddenly threw the remote he was holding against the wall and started yelling. Women just deteriorate with age, but men get better with age. Don't compare. I was so scared by his outburst that I froze and couldn't speak. You can't even rebut my logical argument. Typical of an uneducated woman to be so presumptuous towards a man. With that, he stormed off and didn't come back that day. From then on, he would start yelling about anything. Even though you come home on time, cleaning and meals are half done. Low-educated people really can't get anything right. Apologize me. Who do you think is providing the food you eat? Why should I apologize? I work full-time too. Providing food with whose earnings? Lately, since you haven't been contributing financially, it's been my earnings we're living off. There's so much I want to say, but I'm too scared to speak up when he starts yelling. An uneducated high school grad woman should just quietly serve your husband. Now that you're not young anymore. Remember that all you're good for is household chores. You, old woman. He said, looking down at me smugly as I silently hung my head. Then, one day. When I came home from work, the lights were on in the house. Had Dylan come home early? I thought it was unusual as I opened the door, only to find unfamiliar women's shoes next to Dylan's. A guest, perhaps? I had a bad feeling. I'm home. As I opened the living room door, there was Dylan, sprawled on the sofa, with a young, beautiful woman I'd never seen before. Leaning on his shoulder. Who might you be? A guest. I couldn't grasp the situation and just looked back and forth between their faces. Seeing me, they both started laughing. Just like you said. She's just an ordinary old lady, hilarious. The woman, despite her beautiful face, was laughing crudely, clapping her hands. It reminded me oddly of a stuffed monkey I once saw that played the tambourine. This is Olivia. She just graduated from university. Unlike you, she's a well-educated lady. I'm starting a new life with her. I can't stand being with an old woman like you anymore. We're getting divorced today. He said so coldly. It's your fault for getting older and deteriorating after being young and cute when we first met. Low education really is no good. The divorce is all your fault. I was shouted at by Dylan and had no choice but to accept the divorce. Now that you're of no use to me, let's go. She linked arms with Dylan and said, "Well, we're eloping now," as if to show off to me. Elopement. What about your job? What's going to happen to this house? I've quit my job. I'm starting my life over. The lease is cancelled. Leave by the end of the week. We're done, so don't follow or look for me. Bye. They left the house together, looking very much in love. I sat at the entrance in a daze for a while. After that, my memory becomes a bit hazy. I think I continued to go to work as usual. Before I knew it, I had moved to a new apartment, so I must have managed the move properly. It was about half a year after the divorce that I started to regain my composure. It was then that my colleagues at work started to say things like, "So you got divorced." We were surprised when Dylan suddenly quit his job. You looked pale, but you seem to be doing much better now, and I could finally accept that the divorce was real. But strangely, I felt no emotion about it. I'm sorry for worrying everyone. I am okay now. I'll keep doing my best at work. I had recovered enough to respond with energy. From then on, I started my new life afresh. Living alone for the first time turned out to be more comfortable than I expected, and my job was fulfilling, so I spent busy but enjoyable days. And just like that, 10 years have passed since the divorce. I'm now 35, which rounds up to 40. At this age, I think to myself, 35 is still young. At 25, 10 years ago, I was practically a baby in the eyes of society. I'm still working at the same company as 10 years ago, but since it was a day off, I went shopping at a nearby mall. While resting on a bench after shopping, a man suddenly spoke to me. Are you Sophia? I turned towards the voice and saw a middle-aged man standing there. It's me. Wow, you haven't changed a bit. Hearing his voice unlocked a flood of memories. This middle-aged man was Dylan, who had eloped with a young, beautiful college graduate. But it's no wonder I didn't recognize him. He had aged considerably compared to the fresh and handsome man he was 10 years ago. I think he's 45 now, but he looked more like 65. A protruding belly, a thinning hairline. His face was covered in oily blemishes. Even though it wasn't midsummer, he was in a t-shirt, with sweat creating stains. And he smelled bad. I wonder what had happened to him over these 10 years. While I was still in shock, Dylan rambled on. Has it been 10 years? You must have been lonely without me, huh? Wait, you're still using the Smith as your surname? You must have been waiting for me because you couldn't forget me. He noticed the name tag on my bag and smirked. The sight of his dark, broken front teeth peeking through his slightly open mouth only added to his unkempt appearance. That woman I eloped with was only after money. When I changed jobs and my salary dropped, she took all the money and ran off. Even if a woman is young and well-educated, it's no good if she's not charming. You might be a high school grad and quite aged. But considering you waited for me, I might be willing to remarry you. What? Who do you think you are? I'll bring him back to reality. I'm already remarried, actually. No, that's a lie. You're still using your maiden name, aren't you? Dylan raised his voice in disbelief. Indeed, my surname is still Smith. How many Smith do you think there are in the US? My new husband's surname happens to be Smith too. No, that's a lie. There's no way a woman like you, aged and low-educated, could remarry so easily. I don't believe it. You don't even have a ring. I usually wear it all the time, but what bad timing. People around us were watching our conversation from a distance. Just then, a man intervened between Dylan and me, saying, "Please stop harassing her." Who are you? I'm Joshua, Sophia's husband. He is my husband now. Joshua joined our company, and for some reason, he fell in love at first sight with me, who was somewhat downcast after my divorce. Despite swearing off marriage and romance, I was drawn to his kind nature and ended up remarrying. He happens to be the same age as me. A former rugby player, he has a very large build. Joshua? That's not what I'm asking. Sophia, leave that guy and come back home right now. Startled by Joshua's sudden appearance, Dylan blustered and shouted while clearly rattled. The divorce was all on your terms. After all the ridicule, there's no way I'm going back to how things were. I used to freeze up and lose my voice when yelled at, but Joshua gave me the courage to firmly refuse. Dylan seemed taken aback by my response, his eyes bulging and his body trembling. His hands clenched into fists, looking as though he was about to throw a punch at any moment. Then a voice rang out, "Don't bully mommy." The voice belonged to my daughter, Emma. "Hey, it's dangerous, I told you to wait over there." When Joshua tried to hold her back, she protested, "Mommy is being bullied. I hate that man. Go away," and she tried to confront Dylan. Witnessing Emma's resolute stance, Dylan just gaped, speechless. What? No way, you didn't just go. You had another man's child. It's none of your business what Sophia does or where she goes after divorcing you, Joshua stated calmly. Dylan's face turned bright red with rage as he began to rant. I won't accept this. I won't acknowledge it. Sophia, come back. I'll forgive you now, and I'll even accept the child. I'll become the child's father. Be grateful." Every word he said was creepy, making my skin crawl. Joshua felt the same way. "Emma's father is me. Stop this nonsense or I'll call the police." Contrary to Joshua, Dylan was getting more agitated. "Damn it. If you weren't here. Damn it." For some reason, he charged at Joshua like a bull. But Joshua, unruffled, smoothly dodged him. His movement was as graceful as that of a matador. As for Dylan, unable to stop his momentum, he rolled on the ground. Fortunately, no one was in his path. "Sophia. I'm saying I'll forgive you now." Lying on his back, Dylan was fuming mad. He didn't seem capable of getting up, but given his energy, it didn't seem too serious. As Joshua and I exchanged glances, wondering what to do, a security guard came over and surrounded Dylan. It appears someone who witnessed the commotion had called for help. "We're sorry for causing a disturbance," we apologized, to no one in particular. "Let's go home," Joshua said, putting his arm around me, but I was too shocked to move. "Mommy, let's go. Let's go home." Realizing Emma was tugging at my clothes brought me back to reality. "Damn it. Don't forget this." We heard Dylan howling behind us, but we didn't look back as we left. Later on, I found out that someone who worked at the same company as Dylan was among the witnesses at the mall. His misdeeds became widely known within the company, and with no place left for him, he was forced to resign. He used to be a high-performing salesperson, but with his condescending attitude, re-employment might be difficult. What goes around comes around. I was somewhat amazed that karma truly exists. But if bad deeds come back to haunt you, then surely good deeds will too. I want to live my life loving and caring for those around me as much as I can. And never forget to be grateful. That's what I believe. Mommy. I'm hungry. Is dinner ready yet? All right, it'll be ready soon, just wait a bit. I hastened my cooking in response to Emma's urging. I prepare dinner while watching Joshua play with Emma. It's my happiest time. 13 years ago, Michael tossed a copy of the divorce papers at me, saying, "I've sold the house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend." At that moment, I couldn't quite grasp what he meant. "So, Susan, since we're already divorced, just take James and get out," he declared. Those words have stayed with me ever since. I was shocked by what James said when he returned from a job interview. I asked the HR interviewer, "Do you condone affairs?" Suddenly, my son's face was filled with an unprecedented smile. The interviewer seemed to deny it. So I continued, "That's odd. Then why are you here?" Yes, the interviewer at that time was indeed my ex-husband, Michael. "My name is Susan, and I'm 48 years old. I work at a call center for an insurance company. My only family is my son, James. We were abandoned by my husband, Michael, 13 years ago. I met Michael when I was 21. I was a high school graduate and had just started working as a clerk at a subsidiary of a pharmaceutical company. I met Michael, who was 27 at the time and had been assigned from the headquarters. He seemed interested in me for some reason and started inviting me to dinner. At that time, I had just become of legal drinking age. I was definitely thrilled to be asked out by an elite from the headquarters. This continued several times, and we started dating. Eventually, I got pregnant. I was shaken. I thought he would be angry and break up with me. But then, Michael proposed marriage. When we went to greet my parents, he even told my father, who was still alive at that time, "I will make your daughter happy." At that time, marriages due to pregnancy were not viewed very positively and were often referred to as shotgun weddings, so our ceremony was quite simple. Then, our son James was born. Around that time, Michael returned to work at the headquarters, and I followed him, becoming a stay-at-home mom. From then on, I devoted myself to taking care of the home. When James started elementary school, we bought a house with some help from Michael's parents. I thought I was living a happy life. But I was turning a blind eye to the fact that Michael was coming home less and less as James got older. Having married young, at 21, I had no idea what a normal marital life was like. I never questioned why I didn't know any of Michael's colleagues or superiors. Looking back, there were plenty of signs that could have led to divorce. And then, the day James turned 14 arrived. Michael left us with these words. "I've already filed for divorce and sold the house, so get out." From a happy 35-year-old stay-at-home mom, I suddenly became a single mother with a 14-year-old son. When I returned to my parents' house without any notice, my brother and his wife were cold towards me. By then, my father had passed away, and the house belonged to my brother and his wife. My mother, who was around 60 at that time, was overshadowed by my strong-willed sister-in-law and my blunt nieces. In that environment, James and I were told, "It's fine for a little while, but find a job and leave as soon as possible." At that time, I couldn't immediately think of any job I could do. A high school graduate office clerk. No skills. Yet, despite that, the two of us had to find a way to survive. I scoured employment magazines, searching for a job that could support my growing son and me. Still, I was fortunate. James was 14 years old. Although it's said to be a difficult age, he was reasonably sensible. It was much better than being a mother with a baby. That's when I dove into a call center job at an insurance company. My office experience helped me with the phone handling. Initially, I was a contract employee. And after a few years, I managed to become a full-time employee. However, at first, I was completely exhausted every day by the unfamiliar world. But as I continued with this job, I realized something. I knew nothing at the time of my divorce. I was a high school graduate from a non-academically distinguished family. Even though it's not everything, my ignorance was one reason I ended up in financial trouble during the divorce. It was a divorce due to infidelity. I should have demanded child support from my husband, but the thought never occurred to me. Neither my mother nor my brother thought of it either. Well, my mother might have, but if my brother had any concern for me, he might have sought advice from someone, but he didn't. I realized I had been unfairly treated only after joining the insurance company and learning new things. But by then, it was too late. That's why I wanted my son to attend the highest level of schooling he desired. Wisdom and knowledge can save you. I didn't want him to end up like me. And now, 13 years later, our jobs, salaries, and lives have stabilized. James entered a prestigious national university for science and even went on to a doctoral program. As a mother, it was astonishing. Moreover, he said he'd manage the tuition somehow. How could he manage that with his busy studies? He found a non-repayable scholarship and secured it for himself. All I did was sign in the guardian section. 4 years in undergraduate, 5 in graduate school. He demonstrated his abilities during his studies, attracting scouts from various companies. This is truly a case of a black hen lays white eggs. James's future must be filled with light. Yet, occasionally, I'm reminded of that day. Yes, the day my ex-husband abandoned me. That event still swirls like a dark vortex within me. It truly came out of the blue. As soon as he came home, Michael flung a crumpled piece of paper at James and me. Upon unfolding it, I found it was a copy of the divorce papers. I had no memory of signing them. Yet, my name was written on it, in handwriting strikingly similar to mine. When I asked him what he meant by this, Michael said, "I've sold the house because I'm moving in with my girlfriend." I couldn't quite understand what Michael was implying. The idea of divorce was completely unexpected to me. "So, Susan, since the divorce is already finalized, just take James and leave," he insisted. He mentioned something about not sparing us if we didn't leave within 3 days. I was 35 at the time. Having been just a housewife for 14 years, I had no idea what to do next, so I headed to my parents' house. I can still hear my husband's voice from that time. Maybe I should just forget about it. After all, James and I are living a relatively settled life now. It's not that I'm holding on to the past. It's the frustration with my past self for not being able to do anything and the resentment towards Michael. I know that I could do something now if I were in the same situation, and that's precisely why. On a day off, I was looking forward to a rare lie-in when my phone started ringing. The number on the screen was not saved in my contacts, so I decided to ignore it and went back to bed. But the call kept ringing, pausing, and then starting again. Eventually, I heard a voice from the voicemail. It was my former mother-in-law. She kept repeating, "Please let me speak to your son." I wondered what she meant, but I decided not to answer the call directly. By evening, James came home in a suit, which was unusual. When I told him about the call, he burst out laughing in a way I had never seen before, saying, "I knew they would come." He was shaking with laughter, banging the table, and even shedding tears. "James, what did you do?" "I had a job interview today, remember?" "I told you." "Don't lie. Tell me the truth." "It's not exactly a lie," he said. Then James started to recount what had happened that day. Indeed, there had been an interview. It was with a pharmaceutical company that had been scouting him for some time. But the problem was the company itself. The pharmaceutical company James mentioned. That was where I once worked as an office clerk at its subsidiary. "Oh, it's no coincidence," James said nonchalantly. "By the way, the HR director who conducted the interview was Michael." "What did you say?" "The funny thing is, this guy didn't realize at all that I was his son." "Did you realize it was him?" "Of course. After all, I didn't need this interview in the first place." "Is that so?" "Yeah. This company was scouting me. There was no need for an interview or anything. But as the HR director, he must have seen your resume, right?" "He must have seen it, right?" "He should have, but my appearance has changed a lot since middle school, hasn't it? The hairstyle, the vibe. Everything." "Well, yes, that's true. 13 years is a long time. Plus, I doubt he even remembered my face well back then." That made sense. I had been so caught up in my own situation that I forgot. For James, Michael had also become a distant figure. Besides, seeing my current address and academic background, even if the names matched, he wouldn't have guessed I was his son. That could be true. James was only a slightly above average student in his second year of middle school, 13 years ago. However, after the divorce and transferring schools, he began studying incredibly hard. Suddenly, his grades shot up to the top of his class. He got into a high school that matched his achievements and maintained nearly the top spot in his science classes. Then he went on to a renowned national university. With a recommendation from Professor Smith, whom he met in his third year, James spent 5 years in graduate school. From master's to doctoral programs. During that time, he seems to have achieved a lot in complex areas that I don't quite understand. The scouting means companies saw his accomplishments and wanted him, apparently. Several companies in the chemical industry were interested. So, I was in a position to choose. James casually remarked. That's why I requested the interview. I had researched and knew he was the HR director. I was astonished at how much he had prepared. But he didn't change his expression at all, even when he saw me. The interview was pretty standard. The difference, however, was that James had the opportunity to ask more questions. That's why I asked the HR interviewer, "Does your company condone affairs?" At that moment, James's face was filled with an unprecedented grin. And what did he answer? "Michael, I mean. Of course, that would not be ethically acceptable, can you believe that?" So I continued, "That's strange. Then why are you here?" And just like that, Michael's face froze. James couldn't stop chuckling. Then, thankfully, the managing director, Derek, sitting next to him asked what I meant by that. That's when I pulled this out. What he had was a crumpled piece of paper. Yes, the copy of the divorce papers Michael had thrown at me that day. This is a copy of the document my mother was deceived into submitting by this man years ago. "What do you think about this?" I asked. "You've kept that copy all this time." I thought I had thrown it away. No, I had definitely thrown it in the trash. I didn't want to see it. I thought I had to throw everything away and leave. Yeah, I picked it up after you threw it away. That's why it's all wrinkled. I kept it in a clear file like this, thinking it should never be lost. Why did you? Because it's evidence of what he did to you and of forging an official document. It's not just that. There are various charges, like using a forged document. Besides, that divorce paper was invalid at the time. So if he married another woman, it would be bigamy. Bigamy? I'm not an expert, but I asked a friend from the law department in our university club about it, whether this could be a crime. A crime? Yeah, a clear crime. So, I made it clear on the spot. Isn't this forgery of an official document? Then I gave Derek a copy of the copy. I see. Since we have the original copy here, it's a copy of the copy. Because this copy has his fingerprints all over it. No way I was handing over the actual piece of evidence. So, what do you think he did? What did he do? He suddenly stood up and yelled, "James. Are you treating your own father like a criminal?" Then he turned to Derek, insisting that what I was saying was a complete lie, a misunderstanding. Huh? I couldn't help but feel amused. What was that man talking about? But credit to the executive, he seemed to understand what I was getting at. He turned the questioning on Michael. You know, there's always a power dynamic in companies, right? Michael was probably eyeing the executive position next. Derek seemed to be assessing the character. First, he had Michael leave the room, then turned to me and asked, "Did you request this interview not for employment but for this reason?" I did apologize, saying, "I am very grateful for the scouting from your company, and I do find it an attractive place. However, I wondered what it would mean if a company, which keeps such a person without questioning his ethics, were to employ me." So brazenly put. I was amazed at how smoothly he could say such things during an interview. Derek was really competent. Regardless of whether I would join or not, he thanked me for sharing. He mentioned remembering when Michael divorced and then remarried a much younger woman shortly after. Wondering why he would choose someone like that again. And he remembered you. Really? Yeah. You said our wedding was small, right? Derek was one of the few guests, as his boss at the time. I had no idea. But Michael had been telling people around him that he was the one cheated and just divorced. But Derek had wondered why he didn't take me with him. He even suspected from my photo and name that I might be the one. What? Taking advantage of the lack of knowledge you had back then, we were abandoned. I'm so sorry. I would definitely fight back with a lawyer now, but back then, It's okay. I know you were a full-time housewife all this time. Suddenly thrown out, having to work, and raising me to this point was hard enough. Hey, Mom, I barely remember him. He was always busy with work, or at least, that's what he claimed. Yes, Michael was hardly ever at home back then. Perhaps marrying me was a mistake for him in the first place. He rarely took me to his family's home. It was only during summer and Christmas, and even then, I was just stuck helping in the kitchen. And we always missed each other due to his work. He said we were buying a house, but he made all the decisions, and suddenly we were living there. I realized early in elementary school that our family was different from others. That's why I started to act out a bit in elementary school. What? You did? Yeah, had a bit of an early rebellious phase. So right after starting middle school, I started sensing another woman around him. You did. I didn't want to make you sad, so I didn't say anything. But I regretted not speaking up when he threw the divorce papers at you and told us to leave. His voice was strained. I had never heard James speak like that before. Mom, I decided then that I would acquire a weapon that no one could take away from me. A weapon? Something that made it so only I could do it. With that as my weapon, I thought I could someday confront him about what he did. Then James said, "I feel bad for saying this, but I used your situation as a counterexample." A counterexample? Yes, maybe you're right. He easily discarded you, Mom, and no one could argue because you and your family lacked the knowledge to fight back. Honestly, I'm also angry at my uncle. You're not going to confront him, are you? No, that'd be too much trouble. But even if I do well and rise in a good company, I'll never associate with them again. Oh, except for Grandma. Is that so? I felt a bit relieved. Yeah. Because Grandma told me all she could remember about what happened back then and kept apologizing and crying. When did she tell you this? After I started university. My cousins from my uncle's side were flirting because I was a university student, which was creepy. I couldn't believe my nieces had acted like that. Hey, Mom, maybe we should take Grandma in, don't you think? What? She's always been sorry towards you. And it's painful to see her holding back because of my aunt and them. Thank you. After we finished talking, I mentioned something that had been bothering me. By the way, I've been getting a lot of calls from unknown numbers recently. Just show me, he took my phone. Ah, this. It's his family's number. Derek told me about it. James spat out disdainfully. Then he pressed the call button, switching to speaker mode. Hello? Hello, is that you, James? The voice from the other side was my former mother-in-law's. Calling me by my name as if she has the right, James muttered under his breath. Ah, I've heard from your father. You've gone all the way to a doctoral program at that university and are even being scouted by companies? Haven't you? To think a fine young man like you came from that mother. It must be thanks to our blood. What is she even saying? James muttered again. Hey, how about becoming our adopted son officially? You're going to be busy and need money, right? It would be better than staying with that poor woman. Besides, you're old enough for a good marriage proposal, aren't you? We can arrange plenty of those for you. How about it? Sounds good, doesn't it? Are you listening, James? I'm sorry for being such a woman. I coldly retorted into the phone. By any chance, were you informed that I was the one who had an affair? That's... Ah, I see, it's not the case. Since James said he won't let it go, I'll let you speak to him. Hello? I was surprised to hear from the company's executive, Derek, that you made it seem like my mother was the one who had an affair. So, you were in on it too? No, that's not true. We were deceived by Michael. Calling my mother that woman while you're at it, are you aware you were complicit in a crime? What? Unfortunately, it's past the statute of limitations, but your son is a bigamist who forged a divorce document to marry another woman. I'm ashamed to share his blood. Naturally, I want nothing to do with his parents. But... You'll be hearing from the lawyer my mother and I are hiring soon. What about the inheritance? It would all go to you after I die. James snorted. I couldn't care less about that. You better worry about the alimony instead. With that, James ended the call. Did I go too far? I shook my head vigorously. At the same time, laughter welled up from the depths of my heart as if overflowing. If you've gone to these lengths for me, I must take action too. That's the spirit. James slapped my back in encouragement. Afterward, through James's friend, I was referred to a law firm and decided to claim compensation. Additionally, I demanded 4 years' worth of child support from Michael personally for James. Since then, my phone has been ringing off the hook. Me, a bigamist? What have you been telling her? You've ruined me. Do you want to destroy my wife and kids too? Come on, I provided you a good life for 14 years. Don't think this will end here, and so on. So, I sent back just one reply. Then why don't you just sell the current house? And so, I changed my phone number. As for the outcome, Michael, who faced a combined assault from James and me, ended up paying compensation, was ousted from his HR director position, and was demoted to a deputy factory manager at a distant factory. This information came from Derek, whom we met again. Apparently, the position was nothing more than a nominal one, where he couldn't defy the factory manager and was close to being a mere errand boy. Even though the statute of limitations has passed, the revelation of his multiple crimes has plummeted his reputation to rock bottom. He was on a corporate elite path, but that's all over now, Derek explained. The pharmaceutical company's factory is located far from New York. Due to the transfer, Michael had to sell his apartment and turn it into compensation payments for me. That was the only way he could afford to pay the amount we demanded. Moreover, his wife and children had to move with him. It seems his wife had nowhere else to turn. She, like me, married at 21 and had since been a full-time housewife to a husband of high status. That turned out to be her undoing. She wanted to stay in New York with the children, but that was impossible. Her parental home was as rural as the place Michael was transferred to. It seems she's not well liked by the in-laws. But I have my doubts about the in-laws too. Given how they treated me, it's hardly surprising, but they should have taken action with their son, who took a 21-year-old bride twice. They should have advised their criminal son before cutting off their undesirable grandchildren. Perhaps that's why they tried to get close to James. Ah, here's a competent grandson. But that has nothing to do with James. Speaking of which, I heard something interesting. My lawyer, Alex, shared with me after we settled the alimony issue. Ah, that man really is a city boy through and through. What does that mean? The place he's transferred to requires a car. I clapped my hands in realization. Trying to get a driver's license at over 50, both he and his wife are struggling at the driving school. His wife too. Well, without a car, you can't really live there. For taking the kids to and from school, shopping. And even part-time jobs in such rural areas won't hire you without transportation. I laughed at the thought. By the way, I have a driver's license. My mother insisted I get it, even going so far as to lend me the money for it. It was the right decision. Just hearing about their plight is amusing. Prideful former elite, over 50. May you learn the fear of obtaining a license while being scolded by driving instructors, all the while being bogged down by menial tasks every day. And the following year, James joined a research institute at another company, immersing himself in his own research and seeming genuinely happy every day. Our revenge was over. Now it's time to enjoy myself, my real youth starts now, he said. Well, that leaves the question of when he'll find someone special and settle down. Well, marrying early isn't always the best thing, right? My mother, who had moved in with us, mused thoughtfully. Exactly. I hope James takes his time to find the right partner, someone who truly suits him. With James's new job, we rented a slightly larger apartment somewhere in the middle of our workplaces and moved in. For a while, we three want to spend these newly peaceful days in calm contentment.